Picture this: two armies, tens of thousands of soldiers, staring at each other across a valley in ancient Canaan, a stretch of land so strategically important that over 24 major civilizations would fight over it across 3,000 years of history. Neither side moves. Neither side dares. Because every morning for 40 days, something walks out of the Philistine camp, and every morning the entire Israelite army backs away. His name was Goliath of Gath, and in just a few minutes I'm going to tell you something about him that modern archaeology and ancient medical science have uncovered, something that completely rewrites how you understand this story. Stay with me, because the conventional version of this story gets almost everything wrong. To understand David and Goliath, you have to understand the world they lived in, because it was nothing like the sanitized Sunday school version. The year is approximately 1010 BCE. The Israelites, under King Saul, are in a state of existential crisis. They are a confederation of tribes, not yet a unified kingdom, facing the Philistines, a sophisticated maritime people from the Aegean who had settled the coastal plains of Canaan. The Philistines were not primitive barbarians. Archaeological digs at Gath, Ashkelon, and Ekron have revealed advanced pottery, ironworking technology, and architectural complexity far ahead of their Israelite neighbors. The Philistines had iron, the Israelites largely did not. And that iron gap mattered enormously. Iron swords, iron spear tips, iron chariot fittings. The Philistines had industrialized war in a way that made the Israelite bronze and stone toolkit look almost prehistoric by comparison, which is exactly why what happened next was so stunning to everyone who witnessed it. The Israelites weren't just outmatched, they were outclassed, technologically, militarily, psychologically. So how does a shepherd boy change all of that in under 60 seconds? The text of 1 Samuel describes Goliath as standing 6 cubits and a span. In modern measurements, that's somewhere between 9 feet 6 inches, in the Hebrew Masoretic tradition, and 6 feet 9 inches, using the earlier Septuagint manuscript tradition. The debate over exactly how tall he was has consumed scholars for decades. But here's what they've stopped debating, because modern medicine answered it. In 2012, researcher and writer Malcolm Gladwell popularized a theory first proposed in medical literature. Goliath may have been suffering from acromegaly, a condition caused by a benign tumor on the pituitary gland that triggers abnormal growth hormone production. This would explain not just his extraordinary height, but a cluster of other details in the text that most readers skip right over. Read the story carefully and something strange emerges. Goliath has to be led to the valley by an attendant. When David approaches, Goliath asks, "Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks?" Plural. David is only carrying one stick. He couldn't see clearly. Double vision is a common symptom of a pituitary tumor pressing on the optic nerves. This towering champion, this 9-foot terror who had paralyzed an entire army for 40 days, he may have been half blind. Everything you thought you knew about the underdog just collapsed. David wasn't brave despite the odds. He understood the odds better than anyone in that valley. Now let's look at David. And again, the standard narrative fails us. We picture a small boy, probably 12 or 13, clutching a sling as a toy. We picture innocence. We picture someone who wins because God is on his side. Full stop. No further analysis needed. But that is a catastrophic misreading of what a trained Israelite slinger actually was. Ancient warfare had 3 primary long-range weapons: the bow, the javelin, and the sling. Of the 3, trained slingers were arguably the most lethal at distance. Roman and Greek military commanders considered elite slingers, particularly those from the Balearic Islands and the ancient Near East, to be equivalent to modern-day snipers. The Benjaminite slingers in Judges 20 were said to be able to hit a hare without missing. A sling stone, typically a lead or stone projectile roughly the size of a tennis ball, leaves the sling at approximately 35 meters per second. That's nearly 130 kilometers an hour. The kinetic energy on impact is comparable to a modern handgun bullet. David didn't bring a toy to a sword fight. David brought a ranged weapon to a sword fight, a weapon his opponent literally could not respond to. When Goliath yelled across the valley, "Come to me!" he needed David close. He was a shock trooper, a melee fighter. He needed the engagement to happen at 0 meters. David never let it get there. Here's the question that changes everything. What if the reason we still tell this story 3,000 years later isn't because David was lucky, but because he was smarter than we've been giving him credit for? Let's walk through it, beat by beat, because the text is extraordinarily precise. Saul offers David his armor, heavy bronze plates, a helmet, a sword. David tries it on and immediately takes it off. He is not equipped for close combat, and he knows it. He refuses the kit of the conventional soldier. He goes down to a stream bed. He picks 5 smooth stones. Why 5? One prominent theory: Goliath had 4 brothers, also mentioned in Scripture. David may have been preparing for the possibility that killing Goliath would start a larger fight, not end one. Goliath walks forward, his armor-bearer in front of him. David runs. He doesn't walk, he runs toward the battle line. 1 stone, 1 release. The stone sinks into Goliath's forehead, the one part of his body not covered by his massive armor set, and he falls face first. The text is specific. Face first, momentum carrying him forward. A body that large, falling from that height, creates a sound that an entire battlefield hears. And for a long moment, nothing. Silence across the Valley of Elah. Then the Philistine line breaks. 40 days of fear, 40 days of paralysis, ended in 3 seconds by a teenager who refused to fight the battle everyone expected him to fight. After the battle, David's trajectory was extraordinary. He became the most celebrated military leader in Israelite history, eventually unifying the tribes and establishing Jerusalem as his capital. The Psalms, over 70 of them, are attributed to his authorship. He is claimed as an ancestor by 3 of the world's major religions. But the story of a single afternoon in the valley endures for a different reason. Psychologists have studied what they call the giant illusion, the documented human tendency to overestimate the power of those in positions of strength and underestimate the tools available to challengers. David and Goliath has become the foundational cultural text of asymmetric conflict. The idea that advantages can be liabilities and apparent weaknesses can be disguised strengths. Goliath's size made him a terrifying conventional warrior. It also made him slow, dependent on short-range combat, and potentially compromised in his vision. David's youth and inexperience meant he had no attachment to conventional tactics. He brought exactly the weapon for exactly this opponent, and he knew it before he ever crossed the valley floor. This is why generals study it, why business schools cite it, why it appears in philosophical frameworks from Sun Tzu's concepts of asymmetric warfare to Malcolm Gladwell's work on perceived disadvantage. The world has been calling this story an upset for 3,000 years. But the more I research it, the more it looks like the outcome was never really in doubt. The story of David and Goliath has been told and retold for 3 millennia, in synagogues, cathedrals, mosques, classrooms, boardrooms, and locker rooms. But the version that gets told most often strips it of everything that makes it actually interesting. It leaves out the iron gap, the medical condition, the ballistics, the 5 stones, the rejected armor. It reduces a masterclass in unconventional strategy to a fairy tale about faith and luck.